when you have a game that also has financial value for assets,
Yeah.
when you have something like a player retiring, what does that do to the price of the player? And all of these different things, like how are you putting in to account the value that someone has in a certain player, and then that player retiring, does it instantly go to 90% value, like negative value there, or what? How do you view that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the value of any individual asset can come from a couple different sources, right? One is just like the collectible or like memorable value, and then the second is like the in-game utility value. And that second in-game utility value could be split across a couple of things, right? Is one is directly how much impact can they have on your team in games, and then other is like outside of games. So I'll describe this a little bit, right? In that like um, maybe I'll draw like an NBA comp as an example, right? Like Udonis Haslem is the type of guy who's like been with the Miami Heat for like 20 years now, right? And he keeps getting checks from Miami Heat because he's been such like a supporter of the franchise, right? He's taken pay cuts in the past, and so they continue to keep him around because he mentors all their players. And so we see one value for people who retire is like, hey, they can join the coaching staff or join as a trainer or as a scout to help improve. The other thing basically is basically this is an idea, by the way, so I'm not promising this at all, but it's like, you have a Hall of Fame player who gets voted to the Hall of Fame, and your player basically earns you like a certain percentage of the revenue from the overall league because you have one of those elite players who did fantastic. Right. So there's different
That
mechanisms that you
is
can
that.
have that Web3 enables. And so we want to incentivize people investing in players, making sure that they grow and develop. And then we want to reward people who do have the best and end up creating like value for the overall ecosystem.
I'm a coach myself. Like I'm not a player. I tore my ACL in college, so I
Oh
haven't
man,
played in a long time.
that sucks,
And
man.
I'm a lacrosse player myself. Yeah, yeah, it does. And yeah, PTSD a little bit there. But well, how do you look at coaches? Like, how are coaches viewed in these games? Because again, I'm not a player, but of these manager games, are there coach assets in the future for VBA?
Yeah. So this is something that we think is interesting, right? In that if the core game itself, the original audience is for the manager persona, you can imagine that the person who's a manager might not be the person who's a coach, right? And so coaching can happen in two different ways. One world is in which like I have the team and I go and hire a coach, and now they're sort of like calling plays for my like virtual team. And then the other world basically is now instead of just having player NFTs, you have coach NFTs. And now these coach NFTs can also have a variety of attributes and values that help impact and multiply the players in the team itself. So
So many gameplay questions here. One's
yeah.
coming from. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, like we haven't decided on a direction yet, and this is why we're sort of doing it sequentially. Is we want to do one system at a time, get feedback from the community, and sort of work with them to build in the direction that we feel is right collectively.
Yeah, Coca Jenkins is asking, are there going to be other factors in the fantasy like injuries? How does gameplay work for that? And I want to piggyback on that conversation of like, is there in the algorithm of deciding the winner, is there like a randomness aspect to like having one team be maybe the worst team, but still winning as we see that happen in like multiple different sports, the human element almost?
Yeah. So I'll talk about season zero and I'll talk about afterwards. So season zero, there will not be injuries. In the future, if that's the direction in which the community likes, we can change that with lines of code, right? Same thing if like the community wants to do like a 4 point line, we can talk about that as a feature and say like if there's enough, community collective in that line, we can make the rule change. Um, in terms of like best team always winning, just like how Team USA loses to like random teams internationally all the time, or you'll see like the Nets last night lost to the Grizzlies without John Moran, for example. Like that happens in the league, and so we wanted to make sure that there was still chances for the best team to lose to like a less good team.
I'm laughing here because there's so many people that sit at home and try to be GM and want to be the owner of a team, don't understand the financial aspect of a lot of what goes on. If you add injuries to the game, and I have this awesome player that's worth a lot of money, quote unquote LeBron James esque of VBA, and he gets hurt for his whole career, like he like loses his leg or some BS like that. The financial aspect actually hits you in the NFT space when you add the Web3 version.
That's why we didn't want to include it right away. Actually, is like you can imagine being the guy who drafted Greg Oden, right? Like you
Exactly.
draft Greg Oden, you've spent a first round pick, millions of dollars on him, and he's injured, and it's like you're a manager, so you're helpless in that sense. But it does happen, right? And you lose millions of dollars.
Jesus, this just got we just upped the stakes here.